Hello. Today I decided to finally cover a cruiser that has been much requested multiple times, and I decided now with the recent addition of the German battleships, where especially the battleship meta is at its highest, it's time to cover the Mogami. I actually haven't covered the ship in ages, ever since all the changes they made to it, or the huge nerfs really. I'm actually using the 15-point captain because I honestly couldn't be bothered leveling a totally new captain, so I just took my Zhao captain, slapped it on him, and quickly retrained him for this commentary. Now, that gives me a slight advantage, especially the concealment part, when stealth firing. But here is something worth noting. I am actually using the stock Mogami. You might notice my HP is only 35.5k. I'm using the 155mm guns, and this is the stock hull and the stock guns. In fact, the only upgrade I use on my Mogami is the range upgrade. Now, this is intentional. I have them unlocked, but I choose to not use them because, in my opinion, they have messed up the design of the Mogami big time. Anyway, I will go back to that as I'm showcasing here. I chose this first game, T10 matchmaking, absolutely horrid matchmaking, and I'm showing you how I choose to usually play this. First of all, you see the absolutely devastating HE damage the 155s do to DDs. That's because you launch these huge volleys of 15 shells, you're pretty much guaranteed multiple hits, and you just shred DDs in seconds. Especially at the distance you're able to engage, which is usually around 10 kilometers or 11, depending on captain, as you're able to sneak up close without them knowing and using your friendly DDs to detect them and then supporting them. So First Blood and the Fubuki dead for us. And that's something I like to do quite a bit when I'm up against T10 matchmaking. Sneak up and ambush the enemy DDs, because DDs play such a huge role in the game when it comes to winning it, and they're a very good source of XP. Now, as I was saying about the terrible design of the Mogami, well, first of all, they've been trying to nerf this 155mm spec into the ground. They've started nerfing it right before the Kutuzov came out, so I mean, it's kind of hard to shake off the feeling that they wanted this long-range HE spammer nerfed so that the Kutuzov would have a stronger place in the meta, because in the past you used to be able to use AFT and shoot huge ranges with the Mogami. It was definitely what I would consider overpowered. I loved playing it, but I would say it definitely was a bit overpowered. But it left a bit of a sour taste in a lot of people, including mine, when we enjoyed playing the Mogami so much and we enjoyed the ship, and then they basically nerfed the whole 155mm spec as much as they possibly can. They messed up the turret traverse, they messed up the range, everything they hit with the nerf bat, and then soon after they nerfed the Kutuzov, which is even better at shooting stuff at insane ranges than the Mogami ever was, because the Kutuzov has significantly better arcs. So that left a bit of a taste. But regardless, they obviously wanted the Russian cruisers to have a niche, the Chapayev, the Kutuzov, and this long-range HE spam niche, which they didn't want the Mogami to fulfill. But amusingly, I still consider the 155mm spec on the Mogami by far the strongest one, simply because the sheer amount of shells you can launch, and the way how well it scales with perks like Demolition Expert, buffing the 10% fire chance to 13%. Now, usually 10% doesn't sound like much, and 30% might not even sound like much, but when you're launching 15 shells with such a short reload, you end up becoming this absolutely ridiculous fire starter that just starts, well, you saw one volley on the Yamato 2 fires, like the sheer amount of shells that you launch end up actually buffing your chances of fire significantly. Let's see if I can move out of the way of this torpedo. So amusingly, what I mean when I think they have messed up the design is that, in my opinion, because for some reason they have tied the stealth firing distance, they have tied it with your hull, not with your caliber. They really want you to use the higher upgraded hull, that has all the perks, the HP buff, the torpedo belt, the rudder shift and such. But if you do use it, oh damn it, I just switched to AP as the Shima popped up. That's unfortunate. Yeah, wow, he bounced 6 of my shells. Yeah, that AP isn't strong. but it's good against broadside battleships, which I was about to use it on. Anyway, so they have tied the concealment on firing guns to the hull itself. So even if you use 155mm guns, but you have an upgraded hull, you have worse concealment for some reason when firing, even though it's supposed to be tied to caliber. But this is the only ship in the game where it's tied strictly to the hull instead of the caliber of the guns. So they're like really trying to force you into using this better hull. Now, I'm being radared, I have to move, this is unfortunate. The Des Moines behind me is radaring me. Anyway, and this is very, very frustrating because it literally means that the stock hull is the most useful hull if you want to use the 155mm guns. Even though they try to pigeonhole and force you into using the 203mm guns because they don't want you basically to encroach on the role of this Kutuzov and the Chapayev, I still think the 155mm build is by far the best one, the most efficient one. At burning down battleships, burning down cruisers, deleting DDs with the sheer amount of shell volume. But unfortunately, you have to use the stock one. Okay, on the bright side, you end up actually saving quite a bit of money as you buy the Mogami, because you literally only need to buy the range upgrade. You don't need to buy any of the other hull upgrades. Of course, you have to unlock them with XP to proceed, but you don't need to buy them. So you end up saving a bunch of money. But I still think it's a faulty design to begin with. I mean, I always think that you should have some choice when it comes to customizing the ships, but in this case they really want to force you in one direction, even though I don't consider it the most optimal direction. So I just consider that a design flaw to begin with. Now, the ship itself. Okay, you saw it there, instantly took a citadel. If there's one thing the ship simply isn't good at, it's fighting battleships straight up. This ship might be one of the worst at that. Especially this build, you got a very slow turret traverse, extremely slow. You have to show a significant amount of broadside if you actually want to be using your full broadside or all your guns. You can't angle and fire well at all. Like, this is how much broadside you basically have to show. I'm so greedy to shoot at him that I'm actually eating a ton of damage. I just wanted to shoot the Makaza. That was why I angled myself, but you saw I lost my entire HP pool just doing that. Okay, of course it's a Yamato, so special case, he deletes everything. But that just goes to show how quickly your HP pool will delete or deplete if you show any sort of broadside. So when you play this 155mm spec, you have to quickly accept the fact that you're gonna be more of a scavenger. You're gonna pick your fights. Luckily the concealment is excellent, 10.5, much better than the Mayoko's 13.1. But you're mostly going to be picking unfair fights where basically DD versus DD, you butt in and you destroy the enemy DD, and battleship is occupied with someone else, you start raining down fire on him. Same with cruisers. You in general don't really want equal fights, because while your strength is overwhelming firepower, your weaknesses are very thin citadel armor, having to show a large amount of broadside, a very large citadel, a fairly rubbish turning circle, and I mean rubbish as in 750-meter turning circle. That's worth keeping in mind, considering the North Carolina upgraded one has 760-meter turning circle. So you literally turn like a North Carolina, of course with better rudder shift, but still worth keeping in mind. Stuff like torpedoes are a significant threat to you, because it's not going to be easy to get this slowly turning, fairly long ship dodging around that thing. So keep that in mind. Now, the shells have a bit of an arc to them, especially at longer ranges, but that can actually be abused quite a bit. Since you are playing this stealthy type of build, this is actually quite good for the ship, because you're able to abuse the terrain a fair amount, which is something you need to learn to do on this ship. Like, definitely need to learn to do. An example here, of course, their ships are all on the other side, so I can shoot undetected and I can hit and set on fire this Yamato on the other side of this wall, simply thanks to these arcs. If I had flatter arcs, this would be impossible. And these arcs actually fit this playstyle extremely well, because there are so many maps that you can just hide behind cliffs and stuff and just rain down fire on them. In fact, in many ways I consider this a slightly better Atlanta. Or, well, honestly significantly better from a competitive point of view. Simply because you do a lot of the same stuff. You you never want these fair fights because you're not very good at them. I mean, fighting a cruiser fair can be rough if he knows what he's doing. So you really just want to be picking these advantageous fights over and over again. Now, the AA on this ship, there's luckily no carrier in this T10 game. I mean, I have hard enough time with all these T10 ships to begin with. But luckily there's no carrier in this because the Mogami AA is absolutely garbage. And of course it's even more so garbage because I'm using all the stock hulls and so forth. But even with the upgraded one, don't expect to be shooting down many planes at all. There's no point even trying to spec for any sort of AA build, it's just a waste of time. Your strength is gunpowder, try to augment that in every way. Don't bother to attempt to augment the already sad AA in any way at all. It's simply not worth it. Let's see if I could actually hit this Shima. This is a bit unfortunate, but our DDs... Is that Shima? What is that? I'm a bit worried. We only have one DD left and he already charged into sea. And I'm so low HP because of my stupidity. Stupidity in being greedy and wanting to kill off their Shimakaze. Because, as I said, DDs have a huge effect on domination maps, especially at T10. So I was hoping to... I was hoping to sacrifice a bunch of HP but kill the DD. I figured that would be a good trade, since as a Mogami I really can't do much in the terms of straightforward fighting. I have to be an opportunist, and the less ships there are, the harder it is to get a good chance of being an opportunist, really. Okay, this guy's undetected, so DD is spotting me. I need to kill this guy before he has a chance to shoot me around this corner. Okay. His guns were turned towards me. He was definitively going for me. That's good. Now the damage, for example, in T10 games, the damage can vary greatly. If you get a chance to spam a lot of battleships, your damage can be quite high. But if you get games like this, where I mostly focus on winning the game, but mostly focusing DDs, your damage is not going to be special at all. Oh, DD spotted. I haven't shot, so my concealment is 9.5. I'm hoping he's right in front of me and trying to go for B, and maybe I can intercept him. This is actually very risky because these battleships are both going to open up on me. Everyone opens up on a Mogami if they see them, because that's such a juicy target. This might be a mistake, but I don't know if... I can't afford disengaging, because if he's going for B, he's going to cap B and he might even kill our turrets, and that's guaranteed loss. But he's already turned around and obviously fleeing. Yeah, I should bail now. Uh-oh, it's too late. Yep, full turn right, but it's too late. This is what I meant with the turning circle. Even though I started turning before these torps were even spotted, I still can't make the turn. Maybe if I turned into them by luck, but unlikely. It's not going to happen. My death managed to delay them enough. Or well, the Shimakaze having to use torps on me saved our Iowa. And allowed us to win the game on points because they didn't push into the caps fast enough. Now, while it might look like much damage-wise, you can see XP-wise, I managed to beat out the Shimakaze, the Yamatos, the Hindenburg, the Gearing, all of this, simply because I did so much damage to their DDs with this 155mm spec. So that's another reason why I quite enjoy it, because you can be very effective, even though your damage numbers might not always reflect the effect you're actually having on the battle itself. Now, let's move on to the type of match you're more likely to face than the one I just faced. Because let's face it, yes, the matchmaking can be pretty terrible, but you're rarely going to be only like one of the few T8 ships in the entire game where everyone else is T10. It happens every now and then because of bad luck, but it's not really a good indicator of how I normally play this ship. So I'm going to give a more normal approach I take to playing this ship. First of all, our Fubuki asks for cover when heading towards B, so I say sure, I can cover him. And the idea of course here is I use my concealment, even if you don't have the captain, your concealment is 10.5, so you can easily follow your DD and give him some additional support at the start. Basically, once he starts entering the cap, I'm going to start turning away, so I'm already angled towards my escape if something pops up. But it's unlikely anything big can really ambush me with my DD ahead of me scouting. So this is honestly, even though it might look risky, it's quite safe ultimately. and it gives your DD a significant amount of support to have that one cruiser there, because enemy DDs are gonna think twice about engaging when they see that cruiser, especially a Mogami, just raining down shells on them. Okay, he's torping. I'm not certain. Oh, he's smoked. See, this is. I don't like this. He knows I'm there to support him. He even has a Scharnhorst behind me. He negates the entire advantage of me being here by using that smoke. Basically, the whole. Why did he even ask for us to support him if he was going to smoke up and not spot the enemy DD and punish the enemy DD? See, he's smoked up in panic because there's a DD there, but that's why I went to support him to begin with, because there is a DD there. But yeah, that's some. I feel like many DDs don't understand this. If you have support and you end up in a DD versus DD fight, then you have a huge advantage, and you should be forcing the enemy DD to smoke up instead of using your own smoke. That way you will retain the smoke advantage against him. Anyway, since he's not here, I'm opening up on the Amage. Luckily the smoke happens, or possibly the island, is between me and the enemy DD, so I'm able to stealth fire. Now usually you'll have to keep a 15.2 distance but to be able to stealth fire, but because I have this captain, I'm able to stealth fire from a bit of a longer distance. Okay, I'm guessing I'm not going to be able to shoot this Hatsuhara. Nope. So I'm just going to see if I can get a couple more fires on this Amagi who has damage cond. Getting a fire on now means unrepairable, so it's worth going for it. Not the best start, naturally, losing our cruiser right away. Not sure why he charged into the cap to begin with. That's not something a cruiser should be doing. DDs charge into the cap, cruisers support them, battleships support them both. That's how it's supposed to go. But yeah, oftentimes that can leave plenty up for interpretation, I guess. Okay, of course, harassing the Bismarck. I'm perma-spotted because they have Ognevoys, Atagos and such here. Atago shown broadside, so definitely switching to AP here. Now the 155mm AP is naturally not as strong as the 203mm AP, but that's not to say if you get a broadside you shouldn't be using it anyway. You can still cause a nice chunk of damage, because once again the sheer amount of shells you're throwing out means that if your aim is even remotely on point, you're very likely to get a Citadel or two. So once again, you make up for the damage per shell with the sheer volume of shells, and that's something I often use. Now I know he repaired because I broke his engine there, so he basically has to repair, and of course that's why I'm switching back to HE. But if he's still giving broadside, I'm going back to AP once again. I'm surprised he's going to give me broadside though. Is he really? I just Citadeled him. He has repaired though, so both are viable here. But I choose AP because of the broadside it gives. Even against cruisers, it's worth keeping in mind when they repair, HE becomes very viable. But of course, if someone gives this much broadside, there's absolutely no point sticking to AP. Okay, he's shooting AP at me. Now the Atago, of course, has an advantage here. You see how much damage he does with 1 AP volley, and that wasn't even a Citadel. And luckily he's trying to rush me, and this is something you really can't do in an Atago because he has his repair on cooldown. So naturally, I'm just gonna keep kiting him and spamming H at him, much like in a Cleveland versus Cleveland fight. This is very much in my advantage if he decides to chase me. He's angling, but I'm no longer shooting AP. That's the thing, I'm switched to HE, so his attempt to hunt me down, while he can take on a Mogami, no doubt, in an Ataga, he shouldn't be doing it with his repair on cooldown and the positional advantage I have just kiting him away. He's already dead by now, he's got 2 fires on me. I don't even bother switching to AP at this point. Making sure I don't take any unnecessary damage, I angle away. No need to finish him off faster just so I can use all my guns. He's pretty much dead anyway. Oh, his repair came up. But it doesn't matter. Because once again, the sheer volume of shells means another fire, or simply him dying to HE damage. There we go. In a desperation towards the end, he switched to HE as well. But you notice, by the way, even though I kept angling away, and I honestly felt I played that fight to my advantage, or like I significantly played that fight fairly well, I still lost a bunch of HP. I lost over 10,000 HP there, and most of it was just to AP. Even though I was very, very angled, the armor is just so thin on this thing that you will very, very easily get punished, and very, very easily get Citadel. And it's a bit of a learning experience, honestly. Kind of like the Pensacola for the American line, really, really hammers in the whole notion that you can't show broadside. The Mogami kind of does the same thing for the Japanese line. The Mayoko gets Citadel fairly easily, but that ship still feels significantly stronger than this one does, survivability wise. So this one really, really forces you to constantly keep an eye on your surroundings and constantly be wary of where you're exposing your broadside. Okay, that Bismarck has his repair active. I want to fire on him now then, because his repair should be running out. Oh. Is he going to get away without me getting a fire? I have to keep... You see the Amagi? Always keep an eye on your surroundings. The Amagi is, I think, rushing me. So I have to keep my distance. One more volley on the Bismarck, see if we could get that one fire at least. Wow, of course I have no luck. When you really want the fire, you never get the fire. That's pretty much how it goes. Okay, yeah, this Amagi is definitely rushing me. If I had shot there, I would have gotten detected. So instead, I'm gonna launch my torps, and I'm gonna give it a bit of a time. Because, of course, another thing worth pointing out there, torpedoes. The torpedoes are fantastic. 4x4, meaning 2x4 per side. You can launch 8 of them per side. They each hit for over 17k each. They have 10 kilometer range, 62 knots. They are just excellent torps in pretty much every single way. So they are great, but they're also quite risky to use, because basically you shoot them behind you. So if you try to rush someone and use them, that means exposing full perfect broadside before you can actually fire them. And that's not something you want to be doing. So mostly use them like I did there. Basically, if you shoot them from stealth, where there's no risk of being shot at, and then once you have done that, you can turn around and start firing. But never do that in the middle of the fight. With your Citadel and everything, it's just too risky. Now you might notice I stopped shooting entirely here. That's because I got a fire and a flooding on him. I don't need to expose myself to the North Carolina, because this guy's dead regardless. I forced his repair earlier. So instead of shooting at him and leaving myself detected and giving that North Carolina something to shoot at, especially while I was giving broadside, I just stopped firing to abuse my stealth for a bit. Again, I kinda don't want to keep going in this way. I don't have, in my opinion, enough room to maneuver if I keep pushing up. You see, if I keep going north, I will either have to turn towards him, or I will have to give full broadside. Neither is that attractive. So instead, I just straight up bail. I turn around and bail. Stop firing and bail. Of course, I get punished by the edge. These days, you get punished by losing engine power, which is a significant speed nerf. But that's okay. I'd rather lose some speed and get some distance going. Once again, I use the torpedoes only when I'm in stealth. My idea is when I open fire now, he'll turn right towards me maybe, and then he might eat some of the torps. But yes, that's honestly a thing I see so often in both the Atago and the Mogami. The Atago is more forgiving because it's got better torpedo angles. You can shoot torpedoes at a steeper angle forward than you can with the Mogami. So it's definitely more forgiving, but I see it so often. People in plain view start turning to use their torpedoes, and first of all, it's such an obvious telegraphed sign that anyone with any sort of experience in the game will know that you launch torps, so they'll be able to dodge it. And second of all, you're exposing your Citadel for the entire world to see, which is just horrible. Whereas when you fire them from stealth and then start shooting, people don't really pay attention to it at the same time. tends to catch them off guard because they've never seen you fire torps, and people often underestimate the 10 kilometer distance, especially if they're sailing towards you, because when they see a ship 12-13 kilometers away, they think, well, he has 10 kilometer torps, I'm safe, but they don't take into account the distance they're covering themselves while they're chasing said target down. Did this guy DC? Now he repaired. He's still here. Okay, his guns are turning towards me. That's awkward. You might see here I'm turning, but my turrets can't keep up. But that's okay, I can live with my turrets not keeping up right now because I really need to. Oh, and here's another trick that works sometimes. It ended up working then. Slowing down, basically stopping your speed as you turn. You saw that his shells landed in front of me because I killed my speed right as I made the turn. That's because I knew I wouldn't be able to fully turn before the shells landed. That's a bit of a panic thing to do, and it's good to learn, of course, but you don't want to be doing it if there's cruisers around, because cruisers reload so fast that they'll be able to punish you as you start speeding up again, and you're a very easy target to hit them. Whereas in situations like these, when it's just one battleship shooting you, then it can be used. But in general, it's more of a panic thing, not something you should learn to rely on. Use your angling and turning instead, rely on that, and only use that killing speed tactic as a bit of a last resort, like I did there when I thought he was DC'd, but then turned out he was here after all and turned his guns towards me. That's when I killed my speed to make sure I didn't eat any of the damage. Sadly though, I'm looking at the scoreboard here, and well, I mean, I've killed, what have I killed? An Atago, a North Carolina, and a Mogami, plus all the other damage I've done. I've kind of been doing a bunch in this side of the map, but while I've been fighting here, they have had capture point control and map control, because the rest of my team has utterly collapsed. That's also a bit of an issue with the Mogami in general. The very defensive type gameplay. You notice that whenever I engage someone, I tend to kite away from them. I tend to basically flee, but not really flee, but honestly very defensive play in general. And that's kind of how you have to play this ship. You have to keep your distance, and you have to play defensive and retreating sort of battle. You simply don't have the armor, the turret traverse and such to be able to push in and like really take the battle to the enemy, but rather you have to wait for them to take it to you, which can be quite frustrating. Like in games like these, it's very hard to carry the team. But well, of course it would be quite hard in many ships, but for example in a DD I could push into capture points and make a difference. In battleships I could push some aspect of the map and make a difference, but in the Mogami it's very hard to just push into someone, because you need to abuse the terrain, you need to abuse the stealth. It's simply too flimsy to ever take the fight to the enemy. So this defensive sort of battle is something you need to focus on a lot. Okay, this is awkward. I'm plane spotted, but I can also see I'm normal spotted. See the always keep an eye on that detected sign. If you're ship detected, it prioritizes that. You can be both plane and ship detected at the same time, but that mark will always prioritize being ship detected. So here I know I'm ship detected, and because of my excellent concealment, that leads me to believe that it can only be a DD somewhere here. So you notice I'm constantly changing course, left and right, and just throwing off my course because of I'm expecting torps. And because of how much I've been adjusting my course, I easily dodge them. But sadly, my quick volley of shells didn't kill him. Oh, this is so unfortunate. He disappeared. Oh, now it comes up, but the game is going to end. Well, that was unfortunate, but I feel like that also highlights the weakness, another weakness of the ship, or mainly the way you have to play at this, that the defensive type of gameplay makes it harder for you to carry games. I did 180k damage, and I topped the scores for my team again, but it still wasn't enough to carry this team to victory, which can of course be quite frustrating. Anyway, let's move on to the modules and captain perks that I use on this build of the Mogami. Alright, as usual I will start with the modules. Now, as I said earlier, it's fairly straightforward here. The only thing I actually get is the range module. Everything else I don't bother with. The hull upgrade, no point. You can see when I right click it to preview the stats, you can see that even though it shows nothing on the actual main battery guns, if I go down to detectability range by C, you see it increases my detectability after firing a main gun shell by 1.4 kilometers. Now this doesn't actually, it isn't tied to the guns, but it's tied to the hull itself. So the game, if you upgrade a hull, then you might as well upgrade the guns. But if you want to use the 155mm guns, then there's literally no point of getting the other hulls, which is, in my opinion, once again, really shitty design. Anyway, upgrade wise, gun system aiming mod, damage control, rudder shift, you really need it with your turning circle, 750 meter turning circle, and especially since you don't get the rudder shift bonus of having an upgraded hull. And finally, of course, concealment to be able to use that stealth. Now I use my Za Captain here, so that you already know that this is going to be a good build to use at T10. Of course, first of all, basics of survivability. Expert marksman for that turret traverse. It gets it down to 42.9 instead of the default, I think 51.4 or something ridiculous. So it's very much needed. Vigilance isn't that necessary on Japanese cruisers at high tier. I prefer actually getting Superintendent first, because you kind of tend to stay at range anyway, so that torpedo awareness isn't as important as on a, let's say, American cruiser. So I would honestly prioritize Superintendent over Vigilance on Japanese cruisers. Now of course, Demolition Expert, it's huge for all of the high tier Japanese cruisers. And finally, Concealment Expert, and when you have Concealment Expert, then you can get Vigilance. Anyway, that was my Mogami commentary. I hope you enjoyed it.